All right, moving on. Well, a new study has revealed that 50% of the cases of students having their visas revoked were of Indian students. This concerning stat comes as Donald Trump's administration is at war with universities in the United States over protests against Israel and political activism. But out of the 327 visa revocations reported by American Immigration Lawyers Association, only 2% were due to political activism. 86% of the students had their visas revoked after interaction with the police. But worrying stat is that Indian students are now the largest foreign student group in the United States with a population of 3.2 lakh. The next country after India with most deportations was China, and that too with just 14% of the total recorded deportations. So is this report a concerning one? Why are so many Indian students being deported by the Americans is what we discuss in the next half an hour. Joining us on the platform is Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, Mr. Pramit Pal, Senior Journalist with us on the show as well, and last but by no means the least, Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goel, former diplomat, joins us on the show as well. Professor Nalapat, seeing the bonhomie and the camaraderie between the American and the Indian government, it was always a very comfortable surmise and a conjecture that whatever the policies the Americans may implement, it will never befall on the Indians the way this report has in fact enunciated to be. What do you make of this, and is there some backdoor lack of diplomatic relationship which is also concerning at this point in time? Because obviously if this stat is brought to the ministry, if this stat is brought to the government, which it already has, there would be conversations that will brew up. What do you make of this stat, and how concerning is this to you?
Well, look, Vineet, the fact is that Donald Trump had made it plain during his campaign that he is for Israel and that he is against Hamas and Hezbollah, and also he wants to help Israel tackle Iran's nuclear capability. So all that was frankly very well known. The reality is that freedom of speech on the campus, we can say now, it really has ceased to exist in many ways. So students will have to be extremely careful about what causes they champion, about what they say, what they talk about. And the reality is that, the truth is that from a very young age, students are taught one particular line of political rhetoric, in the sense that not as part of their studies, but as part of their extracurricular teaching, which is very, very important, by teachers, by students, and even by family members. And that is to have a fairly quote-unquote liberal mindset. Now, Donald Trump is no liberal by any stretch of the imagination. And next time you're thinking of applying to the United States, you need to be very watchful of that. Now, we had the case of a young lady who self-deported, and she just hopped across the border to Canada. I'm sure the Canadians will welcome, possibly all, or at least the overwhelming majority of the students who have been having their visas revoked, because Canada has a different set of values where the leadership is concerned, and Canada has a different set of standards where the administration is concerned. So quite likely, many of them will go over to Canada, and there are opportunities there as well beneath.
Ambassador Goel, are you concerned by these reports coming in? Political activism being one, universities should never be a platform for advocating any kind of political prejudice. But the fact of the matter is that Indians are being deported or on the verge of being deported.
Vineet, I'm very concerned. In your one statement lasting just 30 seconds, you have used several value-loaded phrases. Political prejudice. Who decides what the political prejudice is really? And the American universities have been known to give platform to a diversity of political opinions in the past, whoever may be the party in power. that kind of expression of political views has never been curtailed in American university. I'm not even talking about whether it is the Indian students or who takes part. But the fact is that if today the American universities feel that they cannot have that expression, it's troublesome. But anyway, that is not the point that I wanted to make at this stage. Even though the fact is that a lot is changing in the USA, and today we cannot think of the USA as the same kind of the democratic liberal country that it used to be, because the state is overtaking many institutions. But what is troubling me really here is this. Most of the Indian students who are being deported, they are being deported not for the reason of political activism. They are being deported because they have had minor skirmishes with the police wherever they are. Drunken driving, number plate issues, brawls, etc. Now, I'm not excusing all this, but the fact is that this kind of a behavior has happened in many places, including in India. And also now, let me come to what actually is more important here. I've lived in the USA for 4 years when I was working with the United Nations. Even with my diplomatic immunities and passports, I have been at the end of facing police, if not physical brutality, psychological brutality. When they just would listen to any voice of reason, and what comes into their mind, that is the last decision, and you either take it or leave it, finish. The police is not different either in the USA from India. Once you have the power to enforce law, you enforce the law the way you think that you should be enforcing the law. And the problem is that many students from India have become the target of that enforcement of law indiscriminately, and the reason for deportation can be very, very casual, but once the police say that yes, there is a case against him, finish. And the career of the guy who has gone there at great expense is over. That's a very distressful factor, because I see that lot of USA's technology programs were built on Indian, not expertise knowledge, but intellect. The students who have gone there stayed there to work in the different programs, and they contributed to the USA, not to India. And they have to now basically leave the dream and come back to India because of something that the law enforcement agencies don't like. The problem here is dichotomy between the diplomatic channels and the actual executive channel. There may be great friendship between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, even though I must confess that I have yet to see any great evidence of that friendship manifesting into the diplomatic relationship. We have suffered the same kind of tariff increases, the same kind of tariff volatility, etc., that other countries have faced. If it is 10% for Vietnam, 10% for India, things will be different. But there is a variance between what is said at the diplomatic level and what actually happens at the police level. And most of the students in the USA are suffering because of this high-handed police behavior. Vinny.
Absolutely. Pramit, what do you make of this situation? Do you think that this is perhaps turning out to be a monolithic approach, to use the word on behalf of the Americans, and is definitely going to create ripples in the smooth diplomatic association that India has fostered and nurtured with the Americans over the last few decades?
So anyway, first I'd like to say I'm not a journalist. I'm an analyst with the Eurasia Group. It's a risk consultancy in New York. Yes, I think first let's keep this on the scale of what we're looking at. Over 300,000 Indian students in America. We're looking at about 127 have either had what is called their SEVIS registration or their visas revoked, and a handful, not too many. Some of them have, quote, self-deported already, have been deported so far. Some of them, the universities, have filed cases to defend them. And you'll notice already a number of the universities, just on the basis of the universities filing cases, the government has dropped the charges In fact, you just saw the Trump administration withdraw its entire letter against Harvard University, admitting that that was a mistake. That of the half students, the problem will be that of the half of those students, of those 127 students, half of them are on what is called optional practical training. In other words, they are no longer students attached to a university. They've completed their degrees and are doing some technical training, working in a laboratory and so on, mainly in the STEM area. This was something that was introduced in the first Bush administration. They will not get any legal support from the institutions they work for because they're no longer actually students. So you're looking at about 60, maybe 50 or 60 students who will have legal difficulties unless the U.S. government decides to change its policies here. That's still small, but the point is that the impact, as others have mentioned on this action, will be a problem. Already, we're seeing student number applications to America drop off, and we're seeing visitors overall to the United States drop, not just from India, but from all across the world. And I have a suspicion we'll find that the government will start to backtrack on only the most severe cases. Students who have not only carried out political demonstrations, but carried out vandalism and so on as a consequence of that. So we'll see how that plays out. There have been previous cases when we've had visas and immigration issues with the United States. This is not necessarily all that new. So hopefully we'll get this worked out. But you keep in mind, it's been very clear for the Trump administration that immigration is a policy that they were elected on, to rid America of illegal migrants, and to get rid of migrants who they saw as essentially undesirables. He was elected on that platform, so no country should expect any specific quarter on that basis. And he also has a class agenda, if you wish. The MAGA crowd that he represents sees these elite universities as basically part of a Washington, New York, East Coast establishment that is their enemy, that has destroyed their economic base, so the industrial base of America, and needs to be hit out at. So they do not see them as American institutions, they see them as elite institutions that deserve to be punished. So there will not be any particular liking, special privileges given to those universities. The game for us, as we're doing a bilateral trade agreement with them, we're also, I know, speaking to them about working out an immigration pathway for Indians and others. And you'll notice in the joint statement that Modi and Trump had in February when they met, that Trump agreed that skilled legal migration is mutually beneficial to the country. And hopefully that will percolate downstairs to the lower levels of government over a period of time. But as I said, keep in mind the actual number of students involved is still very, very small. And as the universities start to take it back to the courts, and we can see them one by one, the charges being dropped in case after case, depending on how strong the case is.
All right. Okay. Professor Nalapath, Pramit is absolutely right that Donald Trump is obviously propagating legal immigration, and that is something that Dr. S. Jaishankar has also alluded to. But there are other issues as well that are being raked up, which go against, the established world order. Is this likely to produce, some crevices between India and America, which perhaps may be uncomfortable truths for us as well?
Well, Vineet, I doubt it very much, for a simple reason that if you look at the big picture, the situation between the US and China is getting more, if I may say so, more troublous by the day. The tariff war shows no signs of abating, and I think Trump is determined that China will under no circumstance ever overtake the United States as the world's top economy or even as the main tech superpower. So he or other team around him, they are people who are completely focused on that, given that India, from a strategic point of view, is very important. So I would agree with Pramit that the number is small, but it's also true that behavior needs to change when in the US. Now, there are certain countries which expect certain codes of behavior. And you have countries in the Middle East, for example, that expect certain codes of behavior, and generally we have no problem there because those codes are kept. So I think the same now applies to the United States. So I think that should be part of the education of the student before he or she lands in the United States, because there's no doubt huge opportunities for Indians, especially as they're going to be shrinking opportunity for Chinese. They got to be replaced, and we are ideally placed to replace that. So I think we need, quite frankly, no, I don't think this will affect the overall relationship, but I think this needs to be part of the training that's given to a student before landing in America, and that is itself different America from what it was under Joe Biden's time. And they got to mind your language, as they say in England. You got to mind your language. You got to mind your causes. I mean, there are people who are absolutists and who say that this should not happen in democracy, but these are the same people who sought to send President Trump to jail, and the same people who have sent Marine Le Pen to jail. About to send Marine Le Pen to prison so that she will not fight the election. Now, they failed in the case of Trump to prevent him from fighting the election, but in Marine Le Pen's case, the matter is still, under legal loopholes. So hopefully there's a loophole, and there'll be a fair election in France. So this kind of thing, Romania is another country. In the UK, for example, there's some talk of banning some people. In Germany, there's a lot of talk about banning the Alternative für Deutschland, the AfD, because it's been doing remarkably well in public opinion polling. I think these are completely anti-democratic, and when you talk so loudly about democracy, it doesn't apply only to people who have your own view. It applies to people who have a different view. Well, Donald Trump does not have that view, but I'm very strongly of the view that democracy means equal opportunity to all people to express what they or she they want, provided it is not a call to violence, provided it's not a call to hate. So long as that is avoided, I see no problem at all. And the answer to your question is no. Given the opportunities because of decoupling from China, I think the opportunities are immense, and students in India need to take hold of that and really make use of that to the fullest. Thank you.
All right, almost out of time. We'll take concluding thoughts from Ambassador Goel and Pramit. A minute each. Ambassador Goel, to you first.
Beneath, it troubles me a lot that our role in foreign policy is still judged from the point of view of a counterweight to China in Asia Pacific. I mean, so far, all that I've heard from the USA is really nothing specific in terms of what they will do for India. Nothing, zero, zilch. And that troubles me a lot, basically because we are building a relationship with the USA on a one-to-one basis. We didn't think that we will be seen only really in terms of what China is. And today, again, basically, we are comparing the behavior of the American state to our students in terms of what they did to Chinese or what they did to others. I don't think that's a way to look at it, really. I really want to know whether India is still a cherished relationship for the USA or not. And I don't find that to be so anymore, really. Number one. Number two, the point really here is, if you look at China, President Trump has already announced that, China has come back with a deal. They want to talk to the USA. They will do a deal. And I know for certain that if China and the USA do a deal, and particularly the times of Trump, everything else will fall apart. I'm not so certain anymore that we can expect a kind of a behavior rational. I'm sorry, I don't want to use the word, but I'm really struggling for a better word. But a kind of a reasoned behavior, state behavior to India vis-a-vis China. If there is a deal, Ukraine, look at Ukraine. As soon as Ukraine gives an indication that yes, we will do a deal with USA for the critical mineral, Trump is very happy. It doesn't matter anymore what happens to Russia or Ukraine.
All right.
Therefore, I think we need to wait and see. So far, I'm not convinced that any special concession has been given to India. Number two, all that is happening is going to deter the Indian students from looking at USA as a really good educational destination.
All right. Pramit, 30 seconds, quickly, please.
Yeah, so on the India-US relationship, we just have to look at the joint statement issued by Trump and Modi. It has no reference to China whatsoever. It has a lot about the China technology relationship that they plan, including supply chain integration in a whole host of technologies, including new ones that Trump has added himself. But I think the key point to know is that anti-immigrant sentiment is spreading everywhere in the world. India has also just passed a tighter immigration law. Student numbers going to Australia, to the UK, to Canada has put a ban on international students coming in. The world is going to be a lot harder place for students and visitors across the world. And we need to be adjusting to that. And a part of our diplomacy, you'll notice, is to go to countries like Israel, for example, countries that traditionally do not see as places immigrants should go to, and trying to sign deals with them, that we will guarantee legal migration paths to these countries and other places around the world, not just the traditional Anglophone countries that we deal with.
All right. Appreciate everybody who joined us. This is obviously a very serious matter. And of course, like always, there are two sides to it. We take a short break. Be right back.